money's coming from. I'd actually have to
Or I
look.
guess I should say, we don't have two separate funds for
Right.
that, like
Right,
it's the
right.
town budget.
It's coming out of town funds.
Yeah, town funds. So I definitely think it will be I think the group's open to it being a committee meeting. I don't know that everyone certainly can attend if they want, or if there's people that, it's more of an interest for them to attend, we can do it that way as well.
I think in the interest of their time and ours, maybe we just choose whoever is most interested and not have a full board meeting.
Okay.
I agree. Smaller numbers move easier.
Okay.
So shall we propose a date and time for that? Be proactive on when is this meeting happening and
Yeah.
all right, first of all, when do we need to present to the board our opinion?
When's this coming before the board? Is it coming before budget discussions?
Typically, the Folger County recommendation is wrapped up in August.
So it would be in the first August meeting then of the board, probably? Or the last?
We could do some sort of doodle poll with maybe 3 or 4 different options for whoever the teams are that want to work on this project, and then they can select.
Just for edification, ProStack meets next Wednesday. They always
Yes.
meet a week later than you.
So I would assume that Pete wouldn't talk to his members until next Wednesday.
It
Right.
is on their agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you could get a meeting quickly and get it before their Wednesday meeting, he could share observations at their July ProStack meeting. And then you guys can come back at your August OSAC meeting and say you agree or disagree, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that then is the fastest it can get done. So if you are each 9-member committees, so 18 members is unwieldy. I think that's a good observation. So
Yeah.
subcommittee of each, and that can meet quickly would be nice.
Is there a board meeting on Monday, Allison? Is
No.
Monday a board meeting or Sandy?
We're taking a first meeting of July break.
Okay.
So what is the date of the ProStack meeting?
It's
Next
It's
Wednesday.
next one. So late this week or early next week, it sounds like.
Yeah. I was just that's why I asked for the Monday time, just to try to figure out other things that people might need to or want to
Mhm.
attend. Who wants to attend from the group or
Well,
feel they can speak to?
I feel like particularly, I think the president and maybe the vice president should be the
Okay.
3-party people, to be honest.
Okay.
If anyone else wants to join, but at least the 3 of us should be part of that Monday meeting if we're going to do it on Monday.
Okay.
I can commit to that.
Yeah, I could commit to Monday. I'll just have to- Can we reach out then to Peter?
Of course.
Thanks.
Monday evening, 7?
Yeah.
6:30?
Yeah, after supper, yeah.
Yeah,
Monday
okay.
evening, after dinner.
6:30.
6:30 works, yeah. We'll see if members of their committee can attend. Okay. And I'm just looking down at our second quarter to go through. We've done the on number 4 of our second quarter, just the previously identified open space acquisition properties. We have in our packet, Allison has put that in. So that's level 3, Zaharis and Boljack. And do you have to take do you know where those are, Fiona? See if we can, we have to pull our thing down off the wall again. Sean, we'll pull down to show exactly where they are.
Love.
Is-
Where are we here?
It's H6. It's
H6 right here. RS. And then-
So that land just to the upper
Bojack.
left of the water?
And then level 3. That
Yep.
one, yep. So boom, boom,
Bum.
Can anybody recite this acreage?
I have it written down.
Small, and very large.
Yes.
This is, yep,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I have it in a packet somewhere. I can get it up for you.
Okay.
Anyway.
So, and for number one of our acquisitions that we're always interested at this point is the level 3 property.
Which is literally right next to the level 3.
Yeah. Has staff heard anything from level 3 or anything?
No, but we're.
We call every month?
There's communication.
Yeah, and I understand there is going to be a communication that comes forward to update the committees. So
Okay, great.
we've asked for that since every committee keeps mentioning it.
Yep. Zaharis is right next to the reservoir there. And that one is still on the market, but we haven't, I think we'd want to acquire level 3 first if possible. I don't know if you guys have seen the reservoir lately, how full it is with all the rain. It looks nice over there.
So on this page, these are your Boulder County trail recommendations?
Yes.
Okay.
Those are our Boulder County trail recommendations that we have, and we'll discuss those with ProStack, though these were pretty much, I think, spot on with them, with theirs, I think.
Good.
So in the third quarter, we have, just remember COSA, the dates will be 9/14 through 9/16. So we haven't gotten, it's going to be in Snowmass this year. We haven't gotten the agenda yet, or the, I guess, the conference sessions, but we did want to get those dates out there. And we probably might look to send one committee member and one staff member for that, for education, if it matches up. So if folks want to look at their calendars and see if that might possibly work. Like I said, we'll have to see with the agenda if it's something that interests us on a global scale, but that is sort of one of our things, is to have a presence there. And I know when Sharon went, we didn't have someone go last year, unless a staff member went, I don't think so, but when Sharon went 2 years ago, that's where we actually came up with the plan to get involved in National Trails Day and beef up our education efforts in town. So then the thing that's coming up with Hodgkin Harris Reservoir, like I was saying earlier, though it's filling in very nicely. It has quite a bit of water in it now, and Boulder County is going to be looking to have celebrate their opening event of that. Have we heard from them when they're sort of thinking? We just know it's starting to bubble up a little bit more.
Yeah, I think there's been some discussion around it, and also perhaps ProStack's involvement as well, so that might be another thing that group can address, doing some type of joint meeting process.
And then we'll have to probably have some volunteers that will help with that event, depending on how large or small it turns out to be. But it was a long time in coming to get the dam rebuilt and done, so.
So Sandy, just to answer your question about the acreages for each of those properties, level 3 is 195 acres. Zaharias is 28, and Bojack is 25.5.
Very good.
Woods to Harris is 28, roughly.
Um, And then that sort of, with our Hodgkin-Harris Reservoir, the regeneration, there is sort of the talk of like installing bird perches and development of viewing access. So I don't know if that would be something the town would do. And how we would go about recommending that. Is that something we would have to recommend to the board, Allison, if we wanted to have the board put funds towards doing those 2 items, if folks felt that they were necessary, or wanted, how wanted they were?
Yes, I think it would have to be a recommendation.
I'm at a disadvantage. I didn't print my agenda.
Oh, sorry, the agenda for tonight was just to do the work plan
Oh, okay,
items. So
okay.
that's why we're going down through
Okay.
the work plan that's in front of you.
It's one item.
Yeah, it's one item, that's
Sorry
why we
about
did.
that.
Yeah, we saved paper, sorry. Instead of having a full agenda, sorry, we had mailed it out.
So what was your question, Trish?
So one of the things about, so in our third quarter is the monitor, the Hodgkin-Harris Reservoir regeneration, which is, and as appropriate, review the possible installation of bird perches and development of viewing access. And I know for the viewing access was actually something that, if you guys remember, was brought up in our dinner with the board back in January, sorry. So I didn't know if we wanted at this point to recommend to the board or wait to a future meeting that, if that's something we would want to try to get into play before we would even have an opening ceremony. Or if it's just a question if we would want to ask staff to price out anything, or what would be our next steps for that project.
I think it's pretty major when you, I think, have to, the town and Boulder County have to come up with an agreement on how to proceed on that. So I think it's a process.
Okay.
So,
Is that a process we would start by making a recommendation to the board, or is it something that we should sit back on and that's something that will be taken care of at a higher level than us?
what do you know about that, Allison?
I just know that the opening event, there's been discussion around
Right.
it. I haven't heard anything about purchase or anything.
And I'm not saying we have to decide anything tonight, it's just that's sort of what we had put in when we did our work plan.
Is everybody
last week.
on OSAC familiar with the property? Have you walked it and sort of seen where purchase and viewing area is appropriate?
I
Because,
haven't walked it because we weren't allowed down there while they were doing
right.
the dam.
So I might suggest as a opening foray into this whole project that you guys actually, ahead of a meeting or something, meet down there. And by that time, perhaps Allison can figure out the parameters of what is even available, because what comes to mind is when this was discussed. The town spent $600,000 and BOCO spent $600,000 restoring that dam. And at the time, there was discussion that with that amount of money thrown at it, it should be a town resource rather than just a Saddlebrook resource, right? And that's where this idea of bird perches and viewing area came in. And at that time, it was drawn up on a map like the one you showed, Sean, about where that could be, and it was quite a limited little area. It's not a major thing, so I think it would be, it was not a major piece of land, so I think it would be wise for you guys to get a visual on that and possibly get more information about what is possible and what the steps would be in getting that kick-started. I can't tell you what that would be. I don't know. When BOCO's involved, it is a process that either you, Allison, or Patrick, or Martin, I don't know anymore who does that communication with BOCO. Might be all three of you. Yeah.
Sandy, when it was discussed, was it more of just like an abstract thought, or like was there talk about if we're going to put a viewing area in, is it supposed to be accessible just by pedestrians, or is there going to be parking lot? Like, what was
Now,
there anything?
My recollection is it was a boardwalk type of thing that was pedestrian accessed. But what's also been discussed is if Zaharias ever sells, to make a requirement of, because Zaharias is up for acquisition for development. You know, whoever wants to pay the Zaharias family the most amount of money can put in a PD on what it, or a plan on what it could or will be, and various things have been discussed. You guys prefer it to be open space. But in the master plan, in the comp plan, it could potentially be several other things that are what I recall is like senior amenities. It could be ball fields, that kind. It could be a lot of different things as it builds out. And the thought was, if that does sell for development, to require the developers to actually build the boardwalk and build a little more elaborate way that the community can access that. Because when you spend a total of $1.2 million on a pond or reservoir, it really should be, the thought was it should be a community resource to see the waterfowl and all that kind of stuff. So could go any which way. But I think the first step probably is for you guys to get out there, visualize it. I'd like to go with you and walk it and see how it's coming back, and
So
get ideas.
as far as Zaharias goes, there hasn't been any movement on that property, right?
I think the pricing has been
Yeah.
high.
I mean, it
on
seems
that
to make sense. So
property.
if that's kind of out there, it's up for sale. Who knows if anyone will ever pay that price? But if something could happen with it, would we really want to move forward before then and put something in? And then if the sale were to take place, let's say we could buy it, we might have wanted, had we known we had all that property to work with, to propose something else. I mean, I'm afraid if we rush in and do something now, and then all of a sudden that property does become available to us, we may have put in something that in the end will be like, I wish we would have waited a little bit longer so we could have built something a bit better, or a different idea altogether. Or if it's a developer, let them eat some of this cost as well. I mean, is this something we want to tackle before
No,
that sells?
and like I said, I'm just looking at it, we put it on our work plan when we worked on it
Yeah.
last fall. So it's certainly something that we could say we want to just have an opportunity to go out and look at it with, you know,
This is
anybody who
certainly
wants.
an area, if you're seeking areas to collaborate with ProStack, I think the same items on their work plan.
Yeah.
So, if, you know, using an opportunity to go out and both look at it, and maybe it's your next joint
Yeah.
meeting with ProStack to sort of bat around some ideas,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But it's totally in its infancy.
Yeah.
And so it just seems to me to see it and feel it might be the starting point.
Okay. Sounds good.
It feels useful to go out there just for someone like me who's never been there. So I can either do that on my own, or if we want to do that as a group.
I think it would be good if we could do it as a group and then potentially have a staff member who can also give some history to it as well for the newer folks who
And
aren't as
would they
aware.
approach it through Saddlebrook? You then need entrance into Saddlebrook, which
Yeah,
that would have to be coordinated.
yep. So.
I don't even know how you'd enter it.
I'll check into that.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. I was going to say, I usually approach it in the car, which then I just notice the water levels. And
Mhm.
I've seen a number of birds flying in and out, so I think it's doing what we wanted with the dam and the lovely rain season we seem to be having lately.
Well, according to Sharon, didn't she report at another meeting that the waterfowl is returning?
Yes.
And
Yes,
They're consistently out there now.
yeah.
Mhm.
Very happy, I think. So then, that sort of takes what we were kind of looking at for third quarter, and then I would assume the items in fourth quarter would remain the same unless there's things that people want to add to either quarter.
Trish, on that number one item, that review the open space management plan, this has periodically come up over the course of the past couple of years, and at some point, your group was supposed to get a copy of the open space management plan to understand how open space is managed. Have you gotten that copy?
We do have that, right? It's on the, is that what you have on the top? Yeah.
Is that what this is? This is.
I don't know what it looks
I
like.
got this off the internet from our website, so.
And I have this, a similar thing at home with my notes. If there's supposed to be something else, then we don't have it.
Well, all I'm saying is the town has apparently a management plan that they follow every year for open space. And as I understand it, does it come out of the general fund? Do you know how that's paid for? But anyway, there is an active open space management plan out there, and I'm just recollecting that during work plan discussions last year, some people were unaware of that.
Mhm.
And we had asked for a copy at that point, so you understand how open space is managed and maintained and noxious weeds controlled and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
I don't think that's what this is.
Okay.
This is just
No.
summary report and recommendations.
I can make sure to send that out to everyone.
Yeah, if you could,
Oh.
that would be great.
I'm not sure how recently it's been updated, but I can send you the most recent version.
Right.
Okay. Be great. And then, again, in the fall, we'll do our 2016 work plan. So folks, I guess, can take this one as well and determine if there's things we missed this year, or think about that when we get into the fall. Discussing our wildlife enhancement encouragement opportunities, and then engaging with our neighboring jurisdictions to enlarge the corridors and all of that. That's sort of what we've got planned for fourth quarter. And then always ongoing is our sort of always level 3, how we access that. So it'll be nice to hear if anything updates on that. We always do our joint meeting with the town board in the January, or close there too. This year, we did get to collaborate with Louisville, and I think, next year maybe we'll make a bit more of an effort to maybe go west to Broomfield or check out some others as well. And then, of course, monitoring the Coal Creek corridor and the development of the town of Superior, and we have that on our agenda. Sort of our fourth thing is to overlook the recommendations that Jill took out from the last meeting and put them down. And then monitor the process of the Shan, which is open now. I think we've got, another 2 years on the building
Probably
remaining?
2.5, yeah.
2.5, yeah. And
But
then-
there is a growing discussion about a trailhead there.
Nice.
So you guys have percolated that upward and keep doing so if that's a priority, because it's gaining a little bit of traction out there.
That's good. I mean, I think the committee still feels that one of the discussion points we've had, we acquired Shan Shan, which is this property right to the south of us, that used to have the RVs and has that little bunker house. One of the things that we have thought is the potential of a trailhead there that sort of is comparable to the Colton trailhead, you know, some parking, access in there for that areas and sort of ongoing project. So that's nice to hear that it's
Gaining some legs, yeah.
legs.
Mhm.
We especially think it will be valuable when, as the town center grows as well. So sort of mark that as sort of a gateway into that open space areas, and then connecting them all in the back. So that's good to hear that people. And then in our packets, we had from our last meeting, and unless there's something else that folks want to talk about on the work plan, we revised, we were going back and forth on our recommendations that we've had for the town board regarding the town center projects. And Jill took it home, as you remember from the last one, and wordsmithed some language for us, and this is what she came back with. Just one note, before we get started, with Sean making and attending the meeting, we are actually at quorum. Now, if there's anything
Great.
that we want to vote on. Not that there's anything we need to vote on necessarily, but just, I wanted to put that out there. Give folks a moment to read through. One other thing I wanted to say is that I did contact Patrick about getting us out there. Folks wanted to take a tour. We weren't being allowed to let on due to safety reasons with the number of trucks that were coming through, but between Allison and I, we'll keep in touch with him that as soon as we're sort of cleared to do that, we'll get a date on that we can go back and re-go through. Hopefully the stakes will still be there. But with the grading that they're currently doing, that was denied for safety reasons.
Incidentally, it appears that with the grading that they've been doing lately, they have a very raised area, which looks like is going to be the main road, I guess, coming out from the ice rink, which borders the area that we're speaking of in here, the field / open space area. And how is that going to impact watershed, I guess, into that area as well? Because that was pretty high.
I think that's the construction road.
Is it, or is it going to
Yeah.
be
Main Street is
permanent?
on the west side of a number of building blocks where development will occur. So if you're talking about something closer to Coal Creek,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it basically borders along the orange fence they had put up
Yeah.
for construction?
I think that's the construction access road.
Okay, so that's temporary.
Yeah, I think so.
So that's going to be taken away and lowered again?
Mhm.
Okay,
In my opinion.
okay.
That's what I considered it when I saw it.
It's just that we've looked at it from sky view. We haven't looked at topographically what
Mhm.
it's going to look like in the end either.
Right.
So,
Right.
Are they far enough along to develop grading plans? over
They're
there?
doing grading. That's what all the trucks are out there now, is they're actually
For the full site?
in the process of grading the full site. That's where the mountain of dirt has disappeared.
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what they're doing.
So we could review grading plans?
Mhm.
They're available on our website?
The, all the FDPs that have been approved are on the website, right? They're accessible somewhere on the website.
I would assume they would be in the board packets, anything that's been
Yeah,
reviewed by
yeah.
and notes.
Yeah, they're easier to get than hunting through board packets. I've been told they're on the website.
Okay.
I've got the hard copies at home, which I unroll, so, because I can't, I don't know how anybody can use the ones on the website, because they're just so large, but, and you can come in at any point in time and have them laid out on the table for you to review the hard copies.
Okay.
Well, if there's a great interest of it, we could ask for the hard copies to be available for the August meeting
Mhm.
as well. We did look at something once, I remember that was on the whole table, I forget which set of plans
Mhm.
that was, but we can certainly do that as well if there's
Well,
interest.
the one you had in hand when you did the walk,
Yep.
if you just look at that, you can see where the main streets
Mhm.
hit. And you might have that in your materials from previous meetings.
Let's see if I do. It's in my other bag.
Yeah.
We can definitely look at it. So just to open for discussion, folks have read this. Does this look like close to what we wanted, or is there comments?
I have one comment on the third bullet. We actually, in every bullet, we have said we encourage, we recommend, except for the third bullet. We don't actually say we recommend anything in that third bullet, and I think we probably should.
Okay.
We should always have a clear statement as to what we recommend as a committee, and that's the one that does not have it. I think it's fairly easy to add in there.
We could even do it at the beginning.
The second sentence is where I would say we recommend a suitable separation, et cetera, if you want to.
We've been talking about that one for a while. Do we know as a group what a suitable buffer is? What is our recommendation? Because a suitable buffer, in our mind, I'm sure is considerably different than.
Well, there's suitable for aesthetic purposes, there's suitable for the inhabitants of that area, and there's suitable for if they were planning to put a field in there. So there's three criteria. I'm not sure we actually have well-defined, no. I don't think we have well-defined on those three criteria. From an aesthetic standpoint, we don't want to have a fence. From a game standpoint, we want a fence. From an habitat standpoint, we just want space, as much space as possible, or no field whatsoever. So no. Mm-mm.
It seems to me that this, the third bullet, Jill's put in as per the biological impact survey, so that the group, kind of saying that she thought the group agreed to the buffer that was suggested in that survey.
And I wasn't sure that it was clear, based off of that, whether that was referring to the types of plantings or the size of the separation.
And didn't we have requests for reviewing what was said in the past for the Autry Park, since there was a similar situation down in that area? I don't think we got that information in terms of feet from, I guess, the center?
Yes.
And then the type and all that. I mean, we have past history on
Yeah.
this type of stuff already, so.
I think the biggest concern with that is that when we went down there and looked at it, that primary habitat for the purple mouse didn't necessarily seem like it was within the borders of where, like, I think it was 50 feet that we did for Autry Park, something like that.
From the
Within
center, from the center.
So if we
of the
look at
creek.
at that map in the impact survey, it was more kind of bending further out in that area. So I'd be very kind of hesitant to use that as a criteria for this one. We might want to stay away from like just 50 feet out from the center or something like that, which I,
Well, you could say 50 feet and then have kind of a gray area, a gray zone, like a buffer, where it's a transition point, where it's 50 feet and then you transition within a certain feet. I don't know. I mean,
Mhm.
you can't cover all the bases.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
do the best you can, kind of thing.
For
Yeah,
edification, again, and I need to be double-checked on this, Allison, at Autry Park, because I actually walked it out there myself, I thought we had 25 feet from center, 35 feet from center, and like 50 feet from center. And I thought the middle one was accepted, whatever it
35,
was.
yeah.
So I'm not sure, I don't want us to keep using 50 and have it be 35, so we
Can
need to
we
have
check
that
on that?
fact.
Absolutely.
Um,
And
that-
I think the other thing, when we talked about it, was just some of our concern is the way that the creek is sort of like branches out there, like what's the main part of the creek? What's the sort of, with it being like rainy now, it's wider than it sometimes is.
It's apples and oranges somewhat, because you have a pretty narrow creek bed at Autry,
Yep.
whereas a lot of times, because you had, remember you had in the floods, you had it leave the main and forge anew,
Yep.
so you've got it wide.
Mhm.
So, and I don't think you have to be overly specific in this particular thing, in this particular document. Because I think it does a nice job of saying what you're attempting to accomplish. And you will have plenty of opportunity when an FDP comes forth between the approval of this in concept and when that comes forth to actually go out there. And, at that time, you can measure all you want and come up with recommendations that generally X works, but because of the,
That's probably a good way to look at
Yeah.
it, that this might be our sort of overarching goals for how we want the board to look at, that space. And then it will get very specific once we know what the FDP
So-
really entails.
Okay, so do we want to actually list in there basically what I had mentioned earlier, 3 criteria? I mean, from a aesthetic standpoint, as well as from a habitat standpoint, as well as from a, I don't know, playing field aspect. Because the playing field and the aesthetic kind of contradict each other in some ways. So there has to be some kind of compromise. And I don't know what that is personally. Low fence versus high fence, I don't know. Ivy covered fence, something, but
Mhm.
there should be something to stop kids or people from going too far.
Mhm.
is that better tackled now or when we get the next FDP?
Well, I
to
think we
see-
should continue discussions about it, obviously.
Yeah.
This is not the end of it. I think we can discuss a little bit tonight since we have a bit of time. And this is the last item on our agenda, is that correct?
Yes, this
So,
was our last, so we're certainly
yeah.
have time to kick this around and
Right.
figure out what's the best way.
So, in my opinion, from an aesthetic standpoint, the more obstacles, the better. Rocks, again, if you want to do a fence, fine, but you got to cover it with something that's natural.
I think a fence is not going to happen.
Yeah. It's-
I don't think it's in anybody's best interest. Have you been out?
Because we have a fence on the other side
Yeah.
of the creek, and that's.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely natural barriers to keep the cleated kids from running into the creek, to get the ball,
Mhm.
et cetera.
Is there any type of like plant hedge that could act as a fence, but maybe it would only go like knee high
hockey field. Everyone's saying, I'm not getting the ball. New ball.
There are apparently all those kinds of water-loving things, plants.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also, if we were gonna have a trail on both sides, do we want it on the interior of that barrier, on the exterior of that barrier? Where would the trail be? Would it be part of the barrier, basically? Yeah. So.
I think we've recommended the trail on both sides. I think we weren't clear on when our property ends on this side. Like, if the trail ends there, is that because, like, it's no longer Town of Superior's property, or on this side? And then on the other, I'm not sure that Design Concepts has put a trail on there. I think they were looking to maximize field space. Or the trail is around the field, not necessarily.
That word, go to the third sentence in the second bullet. It starts, we recommend that trails be developed on both sides of the creek corridor to effectively safeguard its barriers. I think maybe that word should be boundaries. Am I missing something here?
No.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably should be outboard of whatever we put in there to keep people out, right? Otherwise, if you're on the trail,
That's
then
what I was
you're
thinking, yeah.
Yeah.
then you're within our boundary.
Yeah.
So Sean, nobody has answered your question
Right.
about aesthetic, some happy
Aesthetic, habitat, and
sports.
Right, functional sport.
So are you
program.
thinking that's into number 3 or a separate bullet?
I was thinking, well, it's either incorporating in number 3 or a separate bullet, but.
So your
it was
first
number 3 I had
suggestion,
in mind,
though-
The third bullet I had in mind.
But your first suggestion is we need to say,
I would say, we also need to add, we recommend.
we
At
recommend.
the beginning of the second sentence.
Right, so we
Do
want to
we
add.
want to wordsmith this now, or
Can you pull that up?
do we?
Sure.
I don't mind typing if you want to pull it up.
You might want to look at bullet 2. There is a mention of aesthetically pleasing in there, and that might be somewhere you might be interested in looking at.
Yeah. The third line, yeah, the creek corridor should remain in a natural state where possible while still remaining aesthetically pleasing.
Okay, that doesn't exactly address the barrier, though. That's
So
more-
your 3 is around the barrier then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mine's more
Also, is there a reason in the third bullet that they use riparian corridor when the rest of the document uses creek corridor?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yeah, because the
Is this
riparian,
more-
it's a corridor for the raptors to come through.
Sean,
so-
why not put that idea right after the word delineated? Likewise, the riparian corridors should be protected with a buffer zone that is well delineated, comma, balancing aesthetic, habitat, and functional considerations. Something like,
Which bullet is this?
Number
Number 3.
3, so on the
At the
first
end of the
statement.
first
Oh,
sentence.
sorry, yeah,
so
okay. Let me,
should be protected with a buffer zone that is well delineated, comma, and I just use the word balancing, aesthetic,
Habitat.
and functional considerations. And then you'd have to say what it is you're hoping to achieve with the net effect of with a priority towards retaining, protecting the creek corridor or something like that.
I think we already start with that, though. This is likewise, the riparian corridor should be protected.
Okay.
So we're putting that up front.
Okay, well delineated. Does anybody else see any potential to putting a comma there and?
I like the way you finish
Okay.
it, yeah. No,
Okay.
I like that. I was thinking that, yeah, we have the end goal already up front.
Okay.
Here, this is the first time it's being
no,
used.
lovely.
And they've moved the computer, but it's not syncing with the share drive.
Okay,
So I can't
can
pull
I,
it up
can
on-
I just plug in somehow to show
We'll
up there
delineate
from my
it.
laptop? Do you know?
I don't know, because
She's like, I have no
everything's moved.
idea. If you would, it might be a
You could
a
send it
monitor
to the
piece.
boardroom and I could maybe pull it up on the email.
Okay.
If it's hooked up, it's,
Jill sent it to everybody?
I don't know that she
No.
sent it to everyone.
I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
She might
I
have-
can send it to the boardroom, to do it that way, a workaround here.
Yeah. How about the other bullets, just while we're waiting for that? Because
Yep.
it seems you really want to wordsmith number 3.
Going up to number 2, we really talk about the enjoyment of the town residents. I mean, we are the open space committee. I think it'd be nice if we add something about conserving habitat, not just the enjoyment of the residents. So my thought, just looking at it off the top of my head, is the first sentence where it reads, the preservation of the creek corridor and then I would add here, conservation of natural habitat and enjoyment of town residents is of major importance, or something along those lines. And I don't think that skews the message of that bullet, if we add that little bit.
So conservation of natural habitat.
Yeah.
And for the enjoyment of town residents. Is
Yeah.
of major importance.
Where's the actual computer at?
It's like,
So this computer is not working. It's not synced.
The-
So-
is it over there, Shonda? Like is there like just a cable that you could plug into the back of yours and if you email it?
I'm not sure.
Allison,
One of them is Phyllis's, which is not.
if you want to just forward it to my email, I can pull up my email on that computer, and we can do it that way.
Well, the problem is that this computer
Is
is
not
not
on the network.
syncing with any.
So it's not
because
getting
this is
network
all
access?
new.
So it's not on the web at all.
It's not on the network.
It's not just Outlook that wasn't working, it's the entire internet's not working on that one. Gotcha. Misunderstood.
Sorry about that, it's all
Oh.
new AV equipment and.
No worries.
I thought it was all configured.
Can you at least send the email to these guys, just forward Jill's thing
Sure.
from that way they have, well,
Or we could
everyone
do
can
it-
have,
We could do it on my iPad.
well, these guys both have
Either way.
keyboards.
Okay, I will send it.
Ever is easiest.
So the other bullets, while we're
Who do you
working with
want me to
technology.
send it to?
Just send it to everybody, just,
That works.
It feels like the second to last bullet is in line with what we've been talking about for quite a while, so that one looks good.
the artificial turf one,
Mhm.
yeah.
And the very last one, I think to piggyback up for what Sandy said, it basically says this is what we expect, but we kind of reserve the right to review the plan, so I think that's,
Yeah,
In
the
line.
recommend, yeah.
so maybe we recommend that OSAC review the final plan or something to that effect in that last sentence.
Yeah, would be another staff member's
Purview.
I don't want to mess it up.
So hopefully everybody got that email.
So you're looking to say that we should, do we need to have an explicit sort of that we will review any final plans, or just that sort of a given? Or
Yeah, I was just, after should be reviewed, I think we ought to just say by OSAC to curtail the possible detriment
Mhm.
of lighting, parking, traffic flow, buffer, you name it.
Ah, there we go. We just got to remember to plug that back in
Yeah.
to the monitor, I'm assuming.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna do something else. Okay, so bullet 1.
All right.
We had no changes on bullet 1, correct?
I think
Correct.
bullet 1, we were good, yeah.
Okay, do we want to actually number these instead of, so if we can reference numbers instead of first bullet, second bullet, third bullet?
Yes, that's probably,
First numbered, okay. All right, number 2, so we want to add for conservation, I'll correct the spelling a bit, natural
habitat,
and for
the enjoyment, yeah.
enjoyment.
And then we also wanted to, under safeguard, am I in the right one? Safeguard, its barriers,
Instead of barriers, you want boundaries?
boundaries, yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then is that it for number 2?
Hold on, the first sentence, should
Yeah.
it be for the conservation?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, the preservation of the creek corridor for the conservation.
Of the natural habitat, preservation of the creek corridor for the conservation of the natural habitat, and
that's-
for the enjoyment of,
Okay,
So it's
Of
for
the-
conservation of the,
for the conservation,
Is
or
it-
for conservation of
of the,
I'd put the in both spots.
yeah.
okay.
I'm a professional. I apologize for,
That's okay. So that takes care of number 2.
Uh-huh.
I think
And
so.
number 3, we want to say in the second sentence, we recommend a suitable separation as per, okay. Actually, it's the first sentence that we wanted to add the delineator, right?
Yeah.
Comma, balancing see, I'm an engineer. so
I actually, before you type that, Sean, you guys, the word balancing puts words in your mouth. You need to determine if you want it balanced between aesthetic, habitat, and the sports field issues, or do you actually want to prioritize habitat protection, then aesthetic considerations, then thirdly, sports field considerations. So I didn't want to put words in your mouth.
Right.
So I actually like it with a priority of,
I think we should prioritize in the order. The highest priority should be the first word, the second priority should be the second.
So with
That's-
first priority being,
Okay.
Do they need to be prioritized? I mean,
that's the discussion. They don't. It's whether or not you want them to be.
Because I think what we're going after here is we want a buffer which insinuates space, but we also want a barrier which insinuates either plantings or a fence, which sounds like it might not be the solution.
Brick
but-
wall.
the prickly things that will keep the kids out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and keep balls from rolling in. And so it might be a combination of a buffer and a barrier. And then here's why, and it's for the mouse, it's for the raptors, it's for the preservation of the environment, it's for flood erosion. And so we've kind of mixed and mingled that throughout this. You know, one sentence talks about raptors, the next one talks about floods, the next one. And so I wonder if we could just do,
Why don't we start a new sentence?
Honestly, I'm almost wondering, I think balancing might be the right way to go, because, so we start off with the riparian corridor should be protected. So we're upfront saying we are here to protect this, That's the point of this buffer zone. And in creating the buffer zone, do we really want to say what the priority is? I mean, our priority is just protecting the zone. If we're looking to give some flexibility to people who might oppose our view on this, then do we really want to say it has to be done with the priority of these three things in this order, or do we just want to say in balancing
With a
these
preference of
considerations?
balancing in this order.
Ken, you raise a great point. You say it here. Anything you add that softens that, is that what you want to do?
Do you think saying balancing softens it, or?
I think this is pretty cut and dried. The riparian corridors should be protected with a buffer zone that is well delineated, a suitable separation of hardy plantings.
Yeah, so I feel like we're actually kind of already talking about it, because we then go on to say what we want it to be, the hardy
Right.
plantings. So,
Right.
I mean, we're already touching base
Yeah.
on the natural. We get into that. That's our top one. Aesthetics is in there. Well, natural plantings, I think, kind of gets to aesthetics as well. Do we really, is this something we want to add?
I think prioritizing them also leaves open the door for, like, if we prioritize habitat, then they choose something that's habitat, and the other two are kind of ignored, instead of trying to get something that's more of a mix of them, because they're all seemingly important. We don't want to have one with the other two forgotten.
Well, I think, to your point as well, if this is sort of our overarching like goals, and then when we see something in front of us, then we can sort of come back to this and say, we don't find this aesthetically, we don't find the materials they picked aesthetically pleasing, or we can kind of do it in the plans as well as we recommend those, as we see those.
I think maybe rather than going into the habitat, aesthetic, and sports fields, think a little bit about a suitable separation of hardy plantings. Sean, never has it been said, boulders and hardscape, and appropriate hardscape are suggested. Frankly, it seems so logical in this environment, but I don't even think that's.
So you think a suitable separation of hardy plantings and/or
And-
hardscaping?
No, and, I wouldn't say
And-
and or.
So and hardy.
And appropriate, it's called hardscape, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't
Well,
it? Is a
hardscape to
boulder
me,
hardscape?
hardscape to me is a concrete sidewalk.
Okay.
I
Well,
think
just-
both-
How about natural hardscape?
A natural,
Natural barriers.
a suitable separation of hardy plantings and natural barriers.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Natural barriers, okay.
Mhm.
Because we then do have the flood erosion, foot traffic, and sports impacts.
Natural barriers and natural hard barriers. Or natural rock barriers, let's call it what it is.
Natural,
Boulder
I mean,
barriers.
do we just suggest that natural barriers such as boulders?
Yep.
Yeah, natural, yeah.
So,
Good
comma,
ju-
such as.
Yeah, such as boulders.
and is suggested. Because separation's your noun. That's what you get.
Yeah, that's okay.
We like it.
English training
yeah.
from nuns.
Sandy's gonna diagram out our sentences on the whiteboard over there. On the fishbone. Here you go.
I'm pretty happy with the way we have this written right now.
That looks good.
Somebody raised the issue, though, rightfully, what does that clause, as per the biological impact survey, what does it relate to?
So that relates to the study that the board commissioned, or, I don't know if it was the board or,
Is it a survey or a study? It says survey.
Study, right?
it's Clint's. the
Study.
group that, it was a study.
Right.
And it was
Okay.
the assessment
Yeah.
study.
Should that go at the end of the sentence after "and sports impacts, comma, sports impacts, comma, no parens as per the biological impact study"? Who
Okay.
has read that and knows what does it pertain to in that paragraph?
Can you say that again? What was your question?
What does the clause "as per the biological impact survey" pertain to? Right now, it pertains to a suitable separation of hardy plantings and, what did we say, appropriate natural barriers such as is suggested. It says that that was suggested in the biological impact study. Was it?
I think in regards to flood erosion is what I recall.
It
from
was
the-
that, and for the Preble mouse, it was suggested that hardier plantings were put in that area of that corner. No? Do I have that wrong?
So
Well,
maybe we
I
should,
think the hardy plant, as, in one part, it was saying, this is the zone for the Preble mice. And then in the next part where Clint from ERO submitted his study and then they approved, it seemed to me that my understanding is they approved that corner. But in approving that corner, increased plantings in other areas.
So, given the multiple uses of it, it could work well after "and sports impacts, comma, as per the biological impact study." So it applies to the whole sentence. If it were put there, would it be correct?
I mean, I think our purpose of adding it to this bullet was just that is the study that sort of says what should happen around the corridor. So we wanted to make sure that we
to
kept
protect
reference,
the
that we,
habitat, not
yeah.
necessarily because of those things, flood erosion, foot traffic, and sports impacts. It was because specifically for the Preble mouse. It had nothing to do with any other impacts, as far as I know, with the erosion and such. I think it was just to create a barrier for mouse, not to create a barrier to keep erosion from happening or
Mhm.
foot traffic. I think it was just specific to the habitat, I think.
So you like it where it is?
Either there or actually in the last sentence. Oh, no, it actually says as per the study. in the last sentence. Yeah, I kinda like it where it is.
Good. I can live with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we wanted in there just to say what we were that sort of.
It could also go at the beginning of the sentence. Likewise, the riparian corridors should be protected with a buffer zone that is well delineated, period. Per the biological impact survey, comma, a suitable separation of hardy plantings and is suggested to create a buffer to help withstand future flood erosion, foot traffic, and sports impacts.
That sounds better.
So if we move it to the front, say, as per the biological impact study, comma, we
Comma.
recommend a suitable just take it out of the
Yeah,
parens and give
take
it a
it out of
little
the
bit more
parens, yeah.
We're gonna take
weight.
out the third line then, because it's at the beginning of the third line.
Oh, yes. And then-
Just say,
Say
Just take
particular
that out.
attention, yeah.
Yeah. I know you start feeling highly repetitive.
Yeah.
Recommend, do this.
Shauna, I'd take the word out at the beginning, because it's actually redundant with per.
And we recommend and is suggested, should one of those go? I'm looking to our English major.
Yes. Separation of hardy plantings such as boulders, right,
Yeah.
to create. Per the biological. passes muster with me.
And and you're our liaison to the board, so you can say, it all covers the, the Preble Mouse is in the study,
Right,
this
right,
is,
right.
like, this is what's in the study.
It covers habitat, it covers aesthetic, and it covers functional, so.
Yeah.
Okay, are we all set with number 3 then?
I think so.
Just to piggyback off the riparian corridor, is the creek corridor wider than that? I'm just asking the question because we want to protect the whole thing, right?
It's creek, then riparian, then buffer.
Oh, so riparian is wider.
Mhm.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And then number 4, we were okay with, unless anybody's noted anything else. We thought that covered pretty well, that artificial turf is out.
Would you consider being a little more strongly worded on, artificial turf is anticipated to be
Yeah.
damaging? Would you want to say, we consider artificial turf to be damaging?
Yeah, I like that better.
Okay.
Because that sort of leaves the,
Do we even want to say we consider? Because that, we want to be stronger than that.
That's subjective.
Yeah.
That's just personal opinion, we want
Yeah.
objective.
Artificial,
I think why we put is anticipate, part of that was that none of us are, I think it's, the hybrid turf that we're, I think, one, we know that nobody wants the artificial, right? Or some might want the artificial, but then there's now this hybrid product,
Do we want
right?
to say why we're anticipating to be damaging to the environment? We don't actually specify why we anticipate to be damaging due to leaching of chemicals, or what do we want to?
what is your view? Is your view that any form of artificial turf is not recommended? Or are you willing to accept some of the hybrid forms of artificial turf that are partly artificial and partly natural?
So our feeling on that, and that's why I think we got to anticipate it, is that there's not necessarily as many studies out about the hybrid ones, and we didn't want artificial because it could leach chemicals, or in a flood situation would also possibly bring down materials to the creek if the flooding was bad enough, and that
Like the crumb rubber.
the rubber, yeah, whatever's in the, in the hybrid. So whether it's the artificial turf or the hybrid, that if there was any type of flooding, that could then come down into the creek.
So you're saying is anticipated was pretty carefully chosen?
At that
to-
point, that's sort of
okay.
why we were kicking it around, because the studies haven't come out necessarily for the hybrid products. They're sort of newer, and, but I'm certainly open to having it changed. But I think our discussions in the past have always been, we really just want grass turf. That's what we want, is,
Or open space, of course we want
Yeah.
grass.
Yes, we want grass.
Natural.
Or natural,
Well, and
but it was.
is artificial turf compatible with public enjoyment for a non-sports use? You have to consider, you've just said public enjoyment is a priority, right?
Yep.
So if,
I think that, well, I would say that in some areas, artificial turf is potentially fine. I don't think near a waterway or near the creek is, there's other things with it too, though, just out to the public people, they can play on it or do whatever, but then there's issues with animals on it. There's others that if it is a turf, does that limit what you could do on it, where grass might be better or not? But our discussions in the past have been around what would leach down to the creek. And we felt both straight out artificial and hybrid could cause problems. Because I think, some folks are looking at the hybrid stuff as well. And we just felt grass, but others can come up with different.
Well, I think the public
Takes
enjoyment
on.
is a good point. I've never rolled out a blanket on artificial turf. It sounds terrible. So, we could add a portion of that bullet that says it's incompatible with our goal of public enjoyment, something to that effect.
So we could say,
Do you need to have the damaging to the environment there? Or this used to be, artificial turf is fundamentally incompatible with the natural resource values of the creek corridor.
I think that strengthens our argument.
So maybe just getting rid of that clause, because it's included in the statement, fundamentally incompatible with the natural resource values of the creek corridor, without being overly and maybe unnecessarily specific. Following me?
yes. Yep. No, I'm okay with that. And I think part of our thing too there was to make sure that we didn't, state something that we couldn't back up with facts either. That was,
Shorter is always sweeter if it says what you want it to say.
So we would say artificial turf.
I think Sean's already got it up there, Trish.
Oh, okay, sorry, I'm looking down, chicken scratching over here. And to your point, though, do we want to add anything to that statement? Is incompatible with that and potentially lowers enjoyment, or I don't know, because some people might think it ups the enjoyment because they have a field to do what they want.
Maybe we have it covered there with the natural resource values.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yep,
Is that okay? I just added from contaminants.
yes.
But you narrow it in now.
Right, well, but we say we're protecting the creek and its waterway. What are we protecting it from, though? We kinda, so we need to do something with that sentence.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other thing, if we're a little nervous about it, we could say from potential contaminant, or we could just leave it as is.
I say let's leave it as is.
Okay.
With or without from contaminants.
No, with from contaminant. I think Sean makes a good point. We don't say what we're protecting it from.
Non-natural.
Yeah.
You're gonna get natural contaminants, but,
Mhm.
How about from synthetic contaminants? If we don't like non-natural.
Right, doesn't matter to me. Either one works.
Okay.
Because synthetic gets directly to the meat of
Yep.
what that turf is. I think
Yeah,
that'll-
the artificial, yeah. Mhm. That one looks good.
Yeah, reviewed by whom? That's
Yeah.
a good point. Reviewed by, I heard you saying something. You wanna say OSAC, or do you wanna say OSAC and the board, or?
Or if we just want to say, we recommend that a final plan should be reviewed by the town board and advisory committees, and just leave it. So it's
I
all-
don't think the gist of that is who it should be reviewed by. I think the gist is that a final plan should curtail
Yeah, let's get rid of review
the
completely.
possible detrimental impact. That final plan, I will recommend that a final plan
Should consider and curtail.
should consider and minimize the possible detrimental impacts.
We could probably drop we guys think about dropping possible.
We recommend that a final plan consider and minimize the detrimental
How about just
or
detrimental?
detrimental impacts. And you could even get rid of the word should there. We recommend that a final plan consider and minimize.
Yeah.
That's good.
Ship it.
Ship it? I don't know that we need a statement that we would review, or is it just implicit that we're going to review any plans that come out?
You will review them. You,
Yeah.
ProStac and the board and the planning commission review
And
all
historical,
SDPs.
yeah,
So that can go unsaid in here then.
Right.
yeah. I think these recommendations are. So we do have quorum. If
Would
we-
you just put revision 2 there?
Has this been sent up to the board yet?
Mhm.
No,
You're still working on it.
we're still working on it.
So should we even say revision?
Well, this is for you. When it goes
Okay.
to us, that'll come off.
Okay.
Do we want to take a vote on it? Do we want to put this to bed and get it up to?
I think we
The board.
should.
If you
Yeah.
do take a vote, then get rid of revision 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, last week, everyone was pretty much good and ready to ship it off, just with a little bit of wordsmithing.
Yeah.
I think that was done, and then some tonight. I think nobody would be angered if we went ahead and
I agree.
No.
Push this
I
up.
think we're done.
Yeah.
Kind of like our mission, I think.
Yeah, we need to
done.
stick a fork in
Pencil whip
it. Yep. Can we get a recommendation for, or a motion?
A motion?
Motion.
uh,
Somebody want to recommend voting on it?
I move that we send these recommendations to the board.
Yep.
We can wordsmith that in the notes.
Approve this recommendation
But
and
before
send
we
it to the
do
board.
that, do we
Yeah.
want to discuss this with ProStac or not first, again?
Well,
I don't
Gonna
think
be-
on this.
Okay.
Yeah, these recommendations should be, I think, separate.
Right,
I
very
agree.
good.
Because I don't think ProStac, I don't think we're gonna get ProStac to buy into all this. They're,
They have different charges,
Yeah,
I
they
think,
have-
from their,
Okay.
from their stuff, so. So we had Ken make a motion. Do we have a second to
A
vote on it?
second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that's unanimous, Allison?
And if you could send that.
I'm going to send it right back to that same email you just sent out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was our official agenda. but-
Could we just get a real high-level overview of what's happening? I mean, clearly the ice rink is going in. What are the next steps, big picture?
The ice rink, we've heard about the clinic that is right next to the ice rink. And we heard from the developer that there has to be access off McCaslin to the ice rink. And he will, in some manner, construct Main Street eventually. That's the access. And so I would suspect that might be the next thing that goes in, although it's not necessarily clear because he's waiting for all kinds of agreements with potential apartment entities, the single-family housing developers, et cetera. So we've got quite a ways to go on Boulder Valley Ice. I don't think that's going to be fully operational. Was it spring of 2016 that we're talking about now? They were hoping by the end of by winter, but maybe one sheet will be operational, and they'll keep the other sheet over where it is now. So a little slower, but there is progress. It's really all I know. I have a thing I'd like to pass out. This was in both the Denver Post and Daily Camera within a couple of days of each other in mid-June. And I just discussed it with, I was up here meeting with the manager and Patrick with Parks and Rec. To me, it's very intriguing and it's very encouraging. The important paragraph is about paragraph 5, and that's the goal of GOCO's new Inspire initiative, an ambitious 5-year, $25 million grant program that aims to help 15 Colorado communities develop close-to-home natural experiences on trails and parks near rivers and woods. And, this to me was what came, I have two concepts that came to mind here. One, remember the original concept of the Coal Creek Corridor, where the concept was to actually build little inlets, if you will, for the kids to play in and to naturally experience the corridor. I mean, that creek. And so I discussed it a little bit with Matt today. I don't know whether or not the study by the naturalist of the corridor totally disallows interaction with the creek or just in areas. But this to me was an exciting way to actually be innovative and create natural, potentially, great ways to interact with the creek if it's allowed in the plan. This concept came forth during actually the interviews for the various committees this year. One of the gentlemen was an adventure racer, and when asked what an adventure race was, it was repurposing a trail for, not permanently, but could be permanently, to actually make it more of a triathlon or obstacle course sort of experience. So rather than just walking a trail or biking a trail or running a trail, it actually had other fun components to it. And so when I was intrigued by that idea, for one, in terms of your National Trails Day, if you want to really sort of ratchet up the level of interaction on your Natural Trails Day, have it by a cool trail, which you guys probably can identify, and actually make it into a fun obstacle course, triathlon, you name it, type of experience. And to me, that's sort of where this is going a little bit. So I just throw this out at you to put in your little repository of creative ideas. Patrick said he has already requested all the background information on it, et cetera. So
I was going to say, Allison, isn't this right up your alley, getting a grant for?
Yeah, I've been aware of it for a while
Right.
now, and I took a look at it and sent him some information.
But to me, and the board has in front of it the school parcel. I love the idea. Passive parks and parks just with play equipment, to me, don't do it. It's got to go beyond that, So anyway, throw it at you just
It's great.
to get your creative juices flowing.
And we had two little updates that
Oh.
were on the agenda. One is Bug Hunt is going to be coming up August 15th. And I think we already have approximately 20 odd people that are signed up. And the other thing was 4th of July. Several members came, and it was a really
So we could definitely add that to the agenda to talk to ProStack. The next one coming up is Chili Fest, if we think, if we want to have, I did Arbor Day, we did have a booth at Arbor Day. It just didn't work out that we had one at the 4th of July, but if we want to think about that, if having more of a presence at the town sort of sponsored events, we can definitely look at that. And I think Chili Fest is the 12th? Is that right?
September?
September? No. Is that
I don't know.
a Saturday? I forget. But we can look at the dates and see if folks want to have that. And like I said, if we talk to Peter at our meeting with ProStack, it might be something, again, that we could do with multiple committees, just sort of have an advisory committee booth and then staff it across the committees.
You have on your agenda the work plan development about that time frame.
Yep.
So you could actually get community input on priorities
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was looking back at the first quarter with the 3 things that we still have as items started and not completed. Pretty much all of those relate to reaching out to the community. We could actually make this into our big event for reaching out. I mean, the first one that we don't have finished yet is assess the existing and potential trails and receive citizen input on current status and future opportunities. So, I mean, we could show up and hopefully by that time, we could have a concurred upon 5-year trail plan between us and ProStack, and we can present that to them. And then, I mean, if we do one of those big blow-up signs, that would allow people to actually see it and propose other things. So, I mean, we can knock that one out at the Chili Fest, develop a marketing strategy, publicize web-based trail mapping. I mean, we can certainly hand out maps and kind of talk about that, but that can be another easy way to kind of publicize the trail maps. And then determine public outreach program. Well, that's public outreach. That's more than, I mean.
So Chili Fest is Saturday, September 12th from 2 to 6 p.m. So we may want to have volunteers about that
What day was it?
Saturday, September 12th.
from 2 to 6.
Saturday.
And that's at the community park.
Yep. And it's Beer Fest, too.
That is true.
It's chili and beer fest now. Just putting it out there. I don't think I think it might be a good one to sort of definitely target for these things and get a booth, so.
Should we put it on next week's or next month's agenda so we can explore
Yeah.
it further and kind of make a set plan?
Yep.
I'm not going to be here next month. I'm in Massachusetts, so hopefully we have enough people.
Yeah,
For
hopefully.
Yeah, I'm also out. I'll be in Ohio.
Okay.
Just so we know, do either of you guys disagree with anything that was said? Use this as a good opportunity to do that, or any other
No, I
ideas?
think that's great. I think we should talk about the Shan Shan property as a trailhead too, or start putting that out there to the public.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
And then how they might see it useful to them, because there's multiple connectors there, and there's a lot of history in that area. So there's a historical aspect as well as a multi-trail connector aspect.
And that also, we might start looking at how we can rename it from Shan Shan.
Oh, yeah.
So we keep calling it Shan Shan.
Yeah, you could actually have, right then and there, they can.
Right.
Yeah.
Put some
And that might
entries in.
be a good place to also interact with the Historical Commission, because I would
Yes.
think they would be very interested in.
Well, because it definitely backs up, there's a mine
Oh, the
up
mine and the
there,
railroad stuff. and
Yeah,
the
so there's a
moss.
lot in that particular area there that a good name might
Right.
come out.
And topographically, it's much more interesting than Colton Trail.
Yes.
The group also might want to consider the COSA dates, which are the 14th through 16th, and then the Chili Fest date on the 12th, and divvying things up if they're interested in having a presence at the conference.
Mm-hmm.
When is early registration for that? I
I
Bet
looked
it's
at their
now.
website and they gave the dates, so I'm assuming it's gonna be sometime very soon.
Do you guys know whether or not you're going to attend and who will?
I think we were waiting on what the agenda looked like to see if it was something we were
Oh.
interested in.
Yeah, right now the agenda hasn't been published. Yeah, could you send out the link? That'd be great.
Sharon found it very meaningful.
Yeah, I think it was just, we didn't do it last year because the agendas just simply didn't apply to what we were doing.
And I think a lot of us, we were all like, it was very weird. It was
Did
like.
we even talk about trying to get someone to go, though?
We did. We put
did.
it out there and everyone was like, I'm traveling. Like,
Okay.
I distinctly remember I was in Massachusetts that week.
And I was
Uh,
new.
You were brand new. It was, sports, yeah.
But your expenses are paid.
Yes.
Mileage and
Hotel.
hotel and food and, you know, ticket, and,
Mhm.
yeah, so.
All right.
Is it one representative from our committee, or can there be multiple representatives? Go.
It all depends on how much it costs, I think. I think we've sort of offered up 2 spots, and will one be for staff and one would be for a committee member.
Who's going on staff?
It would be Alice and I assume.
Mhm.
That would go. Okay, is there any other items? If not, we'll adjourn. Thank you all.
All right.
Just a reminder, the camera's on till 9.